The barrel of a suppressed Beretta 9mm hovered just inches from her forehead, the cold steel glistening under the dim lights of the restaurant. Silence, heavy and suffocating, filled the room. Dante Moretti, the capo of the most ruthless crime family in New York, wasn't looking at the gun. He was staring into the terrified eyes of the waitress, his own hands trembling for the first time in a decade. She hadn't spilled a drink. She hadn't dropped a plate. She had simply hummed a melody that was supposed to be buried 6 feet under with his father. The rain battered against the stained glass windows of Il Cigno Nero, an upscale Italian restaurant tucked away on Mulberry Street in Little Italy. It was a Tuesday, usually a slow night, but tonight the tension inside was thick enough to choke on. Elena Vance, a 24-year-old waitress with tired eyes and hair pulled back in a messy bun, wiped down table 4 for the 3rd time. She checked her watch. It was 11:15 p.m. They should have closed 15 minutes ago, but no one dared to flip the sign to closed. Not when Dante Moretti was sitting in the corner booth. Dante was the kind of man who sucked the oxygen out of a room just by entering it. Dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than Eleanor made in a year, he sat alone, swirling a glass of amber liquid, a rare 1940 Macallan. His 2 bodyguards, massive men named Rocco and Giovanni, stood by the entrance like gargoyles, their eyes scanning the street outside. "Elena," the manager, Mr. Henderson, hissed from the server station. His face was pale, beads of sweat gathering on his receding hairline. "Does he need a refill? Don't let his glass get empty. For God's sake, don't look him in the eye." "I know, Arthur. I've got it," Elena whispered back. Her hands were shaking slightly as she picked up the bottle. She knew who Dante Moretti was. Everyone in New York did, though few spoke his name above a whisper. He had taken over the Moretti crime family 6 months ago, after the brutal murder of his father, the legendary Don Salvatore Moretti. Since then, the streets had been a war zone. Dante was younger, sharper, and far more vicious than his father. Rumor had it he was hunting for a traitor within his own ranks, someone who had sold his father out to the rival Rossi family. Elena approached the booth. The air around Dante smelled of expensive leather, rain, and gun oil. "Mr. Moretti?" she asked softly. "Another pour?" Dante didn't look up. He was staring at a photograph lying on the table. It was old, black and white, showing a woman standing on a balcony in Sicily. "Leave the bottle," he said. His voice was a low baritone, smooth but carrying an edge of jagged glass. Eleanor placed the bottle down gently. "Is there anything else I can get you, sir?" Dante finally looked up. His eyes were a piercing, icy blue, a stark contrast to his dark hair. A scar ran through his left eyebrow, a souvenir from a past life. He looked exhausted, a man carrying the weight of a crumbling empire. "Music," he said. Elena blinked. "Sir?" "It's too quiet." The silence. "It's loud." He gestured vaguely to the empty stage where a baby grand piano sat gathering dust. "Where is the pianist?" "He left at 10, sir. His shift ended," Elena stammered. Dante's jaw tightened. He slammed his glass down, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the empty restaurant. Arthur, the manager, nearly jumped out of his skin from across the room. "I am paying for the night," Dante growled. "Get him back, or get someone who can play." Arthur rushed forward, wringing his hands. "Mr. Moretti, I apologize. He lives in Queens. He's already on the train. I can put on the radio." Dante stared at Arthur with a look of utter disdain. "The radio? Do I look like I want to listen to commercials?" The atmosphere turned lethal. Rocco, the bodyguard by the door, shifted his weight, his hand drifting toward his jacket pocket. Elena saw the terror in Arthur's eyes. He was going to have a heart attack right there on the floor. "I can sing!" Elena blurted out. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Both men turned to look at her. Arthur looked horrified. Dante looked intrigued. "You?" Dante asked, eyeing her frayed apron and the coffee stain on her sleeve. "Yes, sir," Elena said, standing taller. "I don't play piano well, but I can sing, if it will help." Dante leaned back, crossing his arms. "Go on, then. But if you waste my time, Arthur here pays the price." Elena swallowed hard. She walked to the small stage, her legs feeling like lead. She hadn't sung in front of people since her mother's funeral 3 years ago. Her mother, a woman of secrets, had taught her only old Italian folk songs, melodies that didn't exist on the radio. She gripped the microphone stand. The room was dead silent. She closed her eyes and thought of the rain outside, of the loneliness that seemed to mirror the man sitting in the booth. She didn't choose a pop song. She didn't choose jazz. Without thinking, the melody that came to her was the one her mother used to hum when the thunder was too loud. She began to sing, a cappella. "Dormi, dormi, o figlio mio, sotto l'ombra del vecchio ulivo." Sleep, sleep, O my son, under the shadow of the old olive tree. Her voice was haunting, a smoky alto that filled the cavernous room. It wasn't just a song, it was a lament. It was a Sicilian lullaby, but with a specific, strange variation in the chorus, a change in key that made it sound like a funeral dirge. Il traditore ride, ma il sangue ricorda. La chiave è nel cuore della montagna. The traitor laughs, but the blood remembers. The key is in the heart of the mountain. As she hit the chorus, the air in the room shifted violently. Crash! The bottle of Macallan shattered against the wall. Elena's eyes snapped open. Dante Moretti was standing up, his chair knocked backward. His face had drained of all color. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Rocco and Giovanni had their guns drawn instantly, aiming them at the windows, expecting an attack. But Dante wasn't looking at the windows. He marched toward the stage, his boots thudding heavily on the hardwood floor. He moved with the predation of a tiger. Elena backed away, hitting the piano bench, but there was nowhere to go. Dante grabbed her by the shoulders. His grip was bruising. He stared into her face, searching for something. Recognition. Deceit. A mask. "Who are you?" he hissed. I'm Elena. Elena Vance," she stammered, tears pricking her eyes. "Please, I'm sorry if it was bad. The song!" Dante roared, shaking her once. "Where did you hear it?" "My mother!" Elena cried out. "My mother taught it to me." "Liar!" Dante released her and paced in a tight circle, running a hand through his hair. "That is not a folk song. That is not on any record. My father wrote that verse. He wrote it for me when I was a boy. He never sang it to anyone else. Never." The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. The bodyguards lowered their guns slightly, confused. Arthur was hiding behind the bar. Dante turned back to her, his eyes blazing. "My father, Don Salvatore, died 6 months ago, taking his secrets to the grave. That song, that specific verse about the heart of the mountain, it was a code only he and I knew." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "So, tell me, Elena Vance, how do you know the private code of the Sicilian Mafia's Capo dei Capi? Who sent you? Was it the Rossi family? Are you a spy?" "No, I swear." Elena was trembling uncontrollably. "My mother, her name was Clara Vance. She was just a singer. She died 3 years ago. She never knew any mobsters. She just taught me the song." Dante studied her face. He saw the genuine fear. He saw the confusion. But in her eyes, the shape of them, the flecks of green in the brown, he saw something else. Something that terrified him more than any assassin. He reached into his pocket. Elena flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, he pulled out the old black and white photograph he had been looking at earlier. He shoved it in front of her face. "Look at it," he commanded. Elena focused on the blurry image. It was a woman on a balcony in Sicily, laughing. She was young, beautiful, and holding a glass of wine. Elena gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. "You recognize her?" Dante asked. "That's," Elena whispered. "That's my mother. But she was younger. Much younger." Dante snatched the photo back. He looked from the photo to Elena and then to his bodyguards. The pieces of a puzzle he didn't want to solve were clicking into place. "Rocco," Dante barked. "Bring the car around now." "Boss?" Rocco asked, confused. "What about the girl?" "She's coming with us," Dante said. "No!" Elena shouted. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Dante grabbed her wrist, not roughly this time, but with an iron grip that brokered no argument. "You just sang a death warrant, Elena. If the Rossi family hears that you know that song, you'll be dead before sunrise. You're coming with me." "Is that a threat?" she challenged, finding a spark of courage. "No," Dante said, pulling her toward the exit into the rainy night. "It's an invitation to stay alive." The drive was silent. The armored black SUV wove through the slick streets of Manhattan, heading toward Long Island. Elena sat in the back seat, sandwiched between the locked door and Dante Moretti. The rain hammered against the roof, mirroring the chaotic drumming of her heart. She glanced at Dante. He was typing furiously on an encrypted phone, his face illuminated by the pale blue light of the screen. He hadn't spoken a word since they left the restaurant. "Where are you taking me?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite her fear. Dante didn't look up. "A safe house. My main estate is compromised. If you are who I think you are, nowhere is safe." "And who do you think I am?" Dante finally turned to her. The streetlights flickered across his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw. "My father was a man of many secrets, Elena. He had a family in Sicily before he came to New York. He had a wife. Me. But he traveled. He loved jazz. He loved freedom." He paused, studying her. "He disappeared for 2 years in the late 90s. He told everyone he was in prison to protect the family reputation. But he wasn't in prison. We found receipts later. New Orleans, Chicago, places with music." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "My mother was a jazz singer in New Orleans in 1998. Dante nodded slowly. "Exactly." The car slowed down as they approached a massive gate. It opened automatically, revealing a long driveway leading to a modern, architectural marvel, made almost entirely of steel and reinforced glass, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. This wasn't a mafia fortress. It was a billionaire's bunker. "Welcome to the glass house," Dante muttered. Inside, the house was cold and minimalist. Dante dismissed the guards to the perimeter and led Elena into a vast living room. He walked straight to a wall safe, hidden behind a modern art painting, punched in a code, and pulled out a heavy leather journal. "Sit," he commanded, pointing to a white sofa. Elena sat on the edge, ready to run. "If you're going to kill me, just do it. I don't know anything about codes or mountains. If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it at the restaurant and saved myself the gas money," Dante said dryly. He tossed the journal onto the coffee table. "Open it. Page 42. Elena hesitated, then reached for the book. The leather was old and cracked. She turned the yellowed pages until she reached page 42. It was a handwritten sheet of music. The notes were scrawled in black ink. At the bottom, in Italian, was the verse she had just sung. The traitor laughs, but the blood remembers. But there was something else. Below the lyrics, there was a sketch. It was a drawing of a locket, a silver oval with a swan engraved on it. Elena gasped. Her hand instinctively went to her neck. She pulled a silver chain from beneath her uniform. Hanging from it was the exact locket from the drawing. Dante froze. He stared at the necklace. "Open it." "It doesn't open," Elena said defensively. "My mother gave it to me on her deathbed. She said it was fused shut. She said it was my inheritance." Dante pulled a small switchblade from his pocket. Elena recoiled, but he held up a hand. "I'm not going to hurt you. Give me the locket." With trembling fingers, she unclasped the chain and handed it to him. Dante examined the silver swan. He didn't try to pry it open. Instead, he took the switchblade and pressed the tip into the eye of the swan. Click. A hidden mechanism triggered. The locket didn't open like a book. The back panel slid off. Inside, there was no picture. There was a tiny, folded piece of microfilm. "My God," Dante whispered. "It was never lost. He didn't hide it in the bank. He didn't hide it in the vault." He looked at Elena with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "He hid it on you." "What is it?" Elena asked, leaning forward. "The ledger," Dante said, his voice low. "The list of every corrupt judge, every paid-off politician, and every traitor within the 5 families that my father collected over 40 years. The reason he was killed." He looked at her. "Do you realize what you are wearing around your neck? This is worth $500 million. And it's the reason the Rossi family killed my father. They thought he destroyed it." Suddenly, the lights in the house flickered. The red emergency lights bathed the room in a sinister glow. Dante's head snapped toward the window. "Get down!" Ping! A bullet shattered the bulletproof glass of the living room, embedding itself in the wall inches from Dante's head. Dante tackled Elena, throwing her to the floor behind the marble kitchen island. "I thought you said this place was safe," Elena screamed, covering her head. "Someone talked," Dante growled, pulling a Desert Eagle from a holster at the small of his back. He checked the chamber. "Someone knew I was bringing you here, which means the traitor isn't just in New York. He's in my inner circle." Another volley of gunfire erupted, tearing through the expensive furniture. Glass rained down like diamonds. "Can you shoot?" Dante yelled over the noise. "I'm a waitress," Elena yelled back. "I carry plates, not Glocks." "Well, tonight you learn," Dante said, sliding a smaller backup pistol across the floor to her. "Safety is off. Point and pull. Stay low. We have to get to the garage." "Why?" "Because," Dante looked at her, his eyes fierce. "That microfilm is the only leverage we have. If they get it, we're dead. If they get you, you're dead." He grabbed her hand, his grip warm and solid. "Trust me, Elena. Tonight you're not a waitress. You're a Moretti. Now run." They scrambled across the floor as shadows moved outside the broken windows. The quiet lullaby from the restaurant was gone, replaced by the symphony of war. Elena Vance had just sung her way into the middle of a blood feud, and she had no idea that the man dragging her to safety was the only one who could explain why her mother had never told her the truth. She wasn't just a random girl. She was the daughter of the Don, and Dante Moretti wasn't just her kidnapper. The air inside the glass house smelled of ozone and pulverized drywall. Dante moved with a fluidity that contradicted his size, keeping his body between Elena and the shattering windows. He fired 2 controlled shots toward the tree line, suppressing the attackers just long enough to shove Elena through the heavy oak door leading to the garage. "Stay down!" he roared, his voice echoing against the concrete walls of the subterranean garage. Inside sat a beast of a machine, a matte black Maserati Gran Turismo, its engine cold but ready. Dante didn't fumble for keys. The car was biometric. He slammed his palm against the door handle, and the locks disengaged with a mechanical thud. "Get in!" he ordered, practically throwing her into the passenger seat. Elena scrambled in, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She still clutched the small backup pistol he had given her, though she held it like a venomous snake. Dante vaulted into the driver's seat and punched the ignition button. The V8 engine roared to life, a guttural growl that vibrated through the floorboards. The garage door began to rise, but it was too slow. "Hold on!" Dante gritted out. He threw the car into reverse, spinning the wheel violently. The tires screeched, burning rubber on the polished concrete. He shifted into first gear and floored the accelerator. The Maserati launched forward like a missile. It didn't wait for the garage door to open fully. The nose of the car smashed through the bottom panels of the heavy metal door, tearing it from its tracks in a shower of sparks and twisted aluminum. They burst out onto the wet driveway, debris raining down on the windshield. "They're blocking the gate!" Elena screamed, pointing ahead. Two black SUVs were parked perpendicular to the exit, forming a barricade. Men in tactical gear stood behind the doors, raising assault rifles. "They're not blocking it," Dante said, his face a mask of cold concentration. "They're just barely in my way." He didn't brake. He didn't swerve. He accelerated. "Dante, you're going to kill us!" Elena cried, bracing her hands against the dashboard. "Duck!" Dante jerked the wheel at the last second, aiming for the gap between the two SUVs. It was too narrow for a normal pass, but Dante wasn't trying to pass. He clipped the rear bumper of the left SUV, using the Maserati's momentum to spin the heavier vehicle out of the way. Metal screamed against metal. The impact threw Elena against the door, her head cracking against the window. The airbags didn't deploy. Dante had disabled them for situations exactly like this. The Maserati fishtailed violently on the wet asphalt, mud and gravel spraying everywhere before the tires found traction. They shot through the gap and onto the main road. "Are you hit?" Dante asked, his eyes glued to the rearview mirror. Elena touched her forehead. Her fingers came away bloody, but it was just a surface cut. I don't think so. Who are those people?" "Mercenaries," Dante said, watching as headlights appeared in the distance behind them. "Hired guns, probably working for the Rossi family, but paid by someone inside my organization. Someone who knew I was bringing you here. Why do they want me?" Elena's voice trembled. "I'm nobody." "You have the locket," Dante said grimly, "and more importantly, you have the face of the woman my father loved. That makes you a target." The chase was on. The winding roads of Long Island were slick with rain, turning every curve into a potential death trap. The pursuing SUVs were heavy, but they were relentless. Bullets pinged off the back of the Maserati. "Open the glove box," Dante commanded. Elena fumbled with the latch. Inside was not a map or registration, but a small, spherical device that looked like a grenade. "Is that a bomb?" Elena shrieked. "Flashbang," Dante corrected. "When I say now, roll down your window and drop it. Don't throw it up. Drop it down." They were approaching a sharp hairpin turn. The guardrail on the right separated the road from a sheer drop into the Atlantic Ocean. "Now!" Dante yelled. Elena hit the window button. Rain lashed in, soaking her face. She pulled the pin and dropped the sphere out the window. "Close it!" She rolled the window up just as a blinding white light erupted behind them. In the rearview mirror, Elena saw the lead SUV swerve blindly. The driver, blinded by the magnesium flash, overcorrected. The SUV smashed through the guardrail, tumbling into the black void of the ocean below. The second SUV slammed on its brakes to avoid following its partner, spinning out of control and blocking the road. Dante didn't slow down. He pushed the Maserati to 140 miles per hour, putting miles between them and the carnage. For 20 minutes, silence filled the car. heavy and suffocating. Finally, Dante pulled off the highway onto a dirt road leading into a dense forest. He killed the headlights, driving by moonlight until they reached an abandoned hunting cabin hidden deep in the woods. He turned off the engine. The silence that followed was ringing in Eleanor's ears. Dante turned to her. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a visible exhaustion. He looked at Eleanor, really looked at her, and for a second, the mask of the Mafia Don slipped. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face before he pulled back. "Let me see your head," he said softly. "I'm fine," Eleanor whispered, shrinking back. "Why did you save me? You could have just taken the locket and left me there." Dante looked away, staring out at the rain-soaked trees. "The Moretti family has many sins, Elena, but we do not abandon our own." "I'm not your own," Elena snapped. "I'm a waitress. You're a monster. I read the papers. I know what you do." Dante laughed, a bitter, dry sound. "The papers? The papers say I'm a businessman. The police say I'm a criminal. But the truth?" He turned back to her, his eyes intense. "The truth is, tonight, I am the only thing standing between you and a shallow grave. Now get out. We need to decode that microfilm before sunrise." As Eleanor stepped out into the mud, she clutched the locket tight. She didn't know why, but the way Dante had looked at her, it wasn't with desire, it was with recognition. It was the same way she used to look at old photos of her father, the father she never knew. She shivered, not from the cold, but from a sudden, terrifying intuition. The hunting cabin was dusty, smelling of pine wood and neglect. It had no electricity, but Dante seemed prepared. He lit a kerosene lamp, the flickering yellow flame casting long, dancing shadows against the log walls. Elena sat on a moth-eaten armchair, watching him. He had taken off his ruined suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. His forearms were covered in tattoos, intricate designs of thorns and roses. He was pacing, holding the tiny strip of microfilm up to the light of the lamp, squinting. "It's too small," he muttered. "I need magnification." He rummaged through the cabin's drawers until he found an old pair of binoculars. With a surprising amount of mechanical skill, he unscrewed one of the lenses. He held the lens over the microfilm and leaned in close. "Is it a list?" Elena asked, her curiosity overriding her fear. "It's numbers," Dante said, frustration leaking into his voice. "Thousands of numbers, bank accounts, dates, coordinates. But they are encrypted. Without the cipher key, this is just random noise." He looked up at her. "The song. Sing it again." Elena shook her head. "I'm not singing for you." Dante slammed his hand on the table. "This isn't a game. My father didn't just teach you a lullaby because you had a pretty voice. He hid the key in the lyrics. The key is in the heart of the mountain." "What does it mean?" Elena flinched at his outburst, but stood her ground. "Why should I help you? You kidnapped me. You dragged me into a gunfight. Because your mother is dead!" Dante shouted. The words hung in the air, cruel and sharp. "And my father is dead, and whoever killed them is coming for us next. Do you want justice, Elena? Or do you want to be a victim?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them away angrily. "My mother died of cancer." "Did she?" Dante lowered his voice, walking around the table to stand in front of her. "Or did she die because she was poisoned? A slow-acting toxin that mimics aggressive leukemia. That's how the Rossi family operates. Clean. Deniable." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "You're lying." "Am I? Did she get sick suddenly? Did she decline rapidly despite being healthy her whole life?" Elena couldn't breathe. He was right. Her mother had been fine, and then, within 3 months, she was gone. The song, Dante repeated gently. Please. Elena closed her eyes. She took a shaky breath. The traitor laughs, but the blood remembers. The key is in the heart of the mountain, where the eagle sleeps and the river runs red. Dante's eyes widened. Wait. Where the eagle sleeps. Say that again. Where the eagle sleeps and the river runs red, Elena repeated. Dante grabbed a dusty map of New York State from the wall. He spread it out on the table. My father owned a property in the Catskills. Eagle's Nest. It overlooks the Red River. He traced the line of the river on the map. But that property was burned down 10 years ago. Why would the key be there? Maybe it's not a place, Elena suggested softly. Maybe it's a book? Dante looked at her. A book? My mother, Elena said, her voice distant. She used to read to me. There was a book she loved, The Heart of the Mountain. It was a cheap fantasy novel, nothing special, but she kept it on her nightstand, even in the hospital. Dante froze. Where is the book now? I have it, Elena said. It's in my locker at the restaurant. Dante cursed fluently in Italian. The restaurant, the first place they will look. He ran a hand over his face, the stubble making a rasping sound. We have to go back, but not yet. We need help. I can't take on the Rossi army alone. He pulled out a burner phone from his boot. He dialed a number. Who are you calling? The only man I trust, Dante said. My consigliere, Marcus Thorne. He's been with the family since before I was born. If anyone can get us into the city unseen, it's him. The phone rang 3 times before it was picked up. Dante. The voice on the other end was gruff, filled with worry. Dio mio, where are you? The glass house is in ruins. We found bodies, but not yours. I'm alive, Marcus, Dante said. I have the girl, and I have the ledger. There was a pause on the line, a pause that lasted just a fraction of a second too long. You have the ledger? Marcus asked. His tone had shifted. It was subtle, but Dante, who had been raised in a world of lies, heard it. The relief wasn't there. There was only calculation. Yes, Dante lied, but I'm wounded. I'm at the safe house in Yonkers, the old warehouse on 4th. I need extraction, Marcus. Come alone. Yonkers, Marcus repeated. I'm on my way. Sit tight, Dante. Help is coming. The line went dead. Dante stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he crushed it in his hand and threw the pieces into the fireplace. Get up, Dante said to Elena. Is he coming? Elena asked, grabbing her coat. He's coming, Dante said, his eyes cold as ice. And he's bringing a hit squad. What? I thought you said you trusted him. I did, Dante said, checking the magazine of his gun. But he hesitated. When I told him I had the ledger, he didn't ask if I was okay. He asked about the ledger. Dante turned to Elena. We aren't going to Yonkers. We're going to the restaurant. Marcus will send his men to the warehouse, which buys us exactly 1 hour. And then what? Elena asked, panic rising again. Then, Dante said, opening the cabin door to the rainy night, we find that book, and we find out who really killed our father. Elena stopped dead in her tracks. Our father. Dante stopped. He hadn't meant to say it. The stress, the fatigue, the betrayal, it had slipped out. He turned slowly to face her. The rain fell between them like a curtain. Dante, Elena whispered, her hand going to her mouth. What did you just say? Dante looked at her, his expression unreadable. Clara Vance wasn't just a singer, Elena, and Salvatore Moretti wasn't just a fan. He took a step closer. My father fell in love with your mother in New Orleans. He wanted to leave the life. He wanted to leave my mother, but the family wouldn't let him. So he hid her. He hid you. He visited when he could. Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the rain. No, that's impossible. My father was a musician. He died in a car crash. That's the story he paid for, Dante said mercilessly. Look at me, Elena. Look at my face. Look at your own. Elena stared at him. The sharp jawline, the brow, the way their eyes, despite different colors, held the same intensity. The connection she had felt earlier, the strange familiarity. It wasn't romance. It was blood. I am not your kidnapper, Dante said, his voice breaking slightly. I am your brother. Elena stumbled back, her back hitting the rough wood of the cabin. The world spun. The waitress who served coffee and pasta was gone. In her place stood the secret daughter of a Don, the sister of a monster, and the holder of the most dangerous object in the criminal underworld. We don't have time to process this, Dante said, shoving his emotions back into a steel box. Marcus is coming. We have to move, now. He grabbed her arm, and this time Elena didn't pull away. She let him lead her into the dark, her mind reeling, the song playing on a loop in her head. The traitor laughs, but the blood remembers. The blood remembered, and tonight, the blood would spill. It was 3:00 a.m. when the battered Maserati rolled into the alleyway behind Il Cigno Nero. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, leaving the cobblestones slick and black. The restaurant was dark, the closed sign finally hanging in the window, but the street lamps cast long, ominous shadows. Dante killed the engine a block away to avoid noise. He checked his watch, then his gun. We have 10 minutes before the police patrol passes, and maybe less before Marcus realizes we aren't in Yonkers. Eleanor stared at the back door, the heavy steel door she had propped open 1,000 times to take out the trash. It looked different now. It looked like the mouth of a cave. The alarm code, Dante whispered. Do you know it? Arthur changes it every month, Elena said, her voice barely audible. But he writes it on the inside of the dumpster lid because he forgets. Dante looked at her, a rare smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Professionalism at its finest. Stay behind me. They moved through the shadows. Dante checked the dumpster, found the scribbled numbers, 1985, and punched them into the keypad. The light turned green. They slipped inside. The kitchen smelled of stale garlic and bleach. It was eerily quiet. The stainless steel counters where Eleanor had plated hundreds of risottos gleamed in the moonlight filtering through the high windows. Locker room, Dante commanded softly. Elena led the way. Her heart was pounding against her ribs. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a gunshot. They reached the staff room in the back. It was a cramped space, filled with coats and personal items. Elena went to locker number 4. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't spin the combination dial. Breathe, Dante whispered, his hand resting on her shoulder. You're a Moretti. Fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. Elena took a deep breath. Right 22, left 10, right 4. Click. The locker swung open. There, sitting on top of her spare apron and a pair of comfortable sneakers, was a dog-eared paperback, the heart of the mountain. Got it, she gasped, grabbing the book. Good, Dante said. Now the office. We need light and a computer to cross-reference the numbers. They moved to Arthur's office. Dante booted up the computer, bypassing the password in seconds. He pulled the microfilm locket from his pocket and laid it next to the book. The song, Dante said, flipping through the book. The lyrics you sang. The traitor laughs, but the blood remembers. That's the key. He scanned the table of contents. Chapter 4. The traitors laugh. Page 42, Dante noted. He opened the book to page 42. He held the microfilm up to the desk lamp, using the dismantled binocular lens again. The first sequence on the film starts with 421. Page 42, line 1, Elena realized. She looked at the text. The first word on line 1 was Marcus. The color drained from Dante's face. Keep going. 427, Elena read. Page 42, line 7, Dante confirmed. Elena scanned down. The 7th line started with the word sold. They worked feverishly for 5 minutes, translating the code. The message wasn't a bank account. It was a confession. Marcus sold Salvatore to Rossi. Meeting at docks. November 12th. Price, 50 million. Dante stared at the notepad where he had written the words. He didn't scream. He didn't flip the desk. He just went perfectly, terrifyingly still. He was my godfather, Dante whispered. He held me at my baptism. He taught me how to tie my tie. He was the one who told me my father died. Dante, Elena said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. I'm so sorry. He didn't just sell him, Dante said, his voice hollow. He set him up. My father went to that meeting thinking he was brokering peace. Marcus led him to the slaughter. Suddenly, the silence of the restaurant was broken by the sound of glass shattering in the front dining room. They're here, Dante hissed, snapping back to reality. He grabbed the book and the locket. Back door, now! They sprinted through the kitchen, but as they reached the rear exit, headlights flooded the alleyway. A black van screeched to a halt, blocking the door. Men with suppressed submachine guns poured out. Blocked, Dante yelled, grabbing Eleanor and pulling her back into the kitchen. The basement. Is there a way out from the wine cellar? There's a coal chute, Elena cried. It opens to the side street. They scrambled down the narrow wooden stairs into the darkness of the cellar. Above them, heavy boots stomped across the kitchen floor. Voices shouted orders. Clear the room. Find the girl. Kill the man. Dante kicked open the door to the coal chute. It was a narrow, dusty tunnel leading up to a small grate at street level. You go first, Dante said, lifting Elena up. What about you? I'm right behind you. Go. Elena shimmied up the chute, her uniform tearing on the rough brick. She pushed against the grate. It was heavy, rusted shut. It's stuck, she panicked. Push, Elena, push with your legs, Dante urged from below. She gritted her teeth, braced her back against the brick, and shoved with everything she had. With a screech of metal, the grate gave way. She scrambled out onto the sidewalk, gasping for air. She reached down to help Dante. He grabbed her hand, vaulting out of the hole just as the cellar door below was kicked open. A spray of bullets pinged against the brick walls of the chute, missing Dante's boots by inches. They ran. They didn't look back. They sprinted down the rain-slicked sidewalk of Little Italy, weaving through parked cars, until they reached the Maserati parked a block away. Dante threw the car into gear and peeled away just as the van rounded the corner. That was too close, Elena panted, clutching the book to her chest. Where do we go now? We can't go to the police. Marcus owns them. Dante looked in the rearview mirror. His face was no longer the face of a hunted man. It was the face of a judge, jury, and executioner. We aren't running anymore, Dante said. We have the proof. We have the leverage. It's time to end this. How? Don Rossi thinks I'm dead. Marcus thinks I'm trapped in Yonkers. We have the element of surprise, Dante said. He pulled out a second burner phone from the glove box. I'm going to call a meeting. With who? With everyone, Dante said coldly. The 5 families, the heads of the commission. I'm going to invite them to a funeral. Whose funeral? Elena asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Dante turned to her, his eyes burning with a dark fire. Mine. The sun rose over New York City, casting a blood-red hue over the skyline. But in the underworld, the day was just beginning. News had spread through the grapevine like wildfire. Dante Moretti was alive, and he had called for a sit down. A formal meeting of the commission heads. The location he chose was symbolic, brazen, and suicidal. The Moretti Mausoleum at Greenwood Cemetery. It was neutral ground, holy ground, no weapons allowed. By 10:00 a.m., a fleet of black limousines lined the cemetery paths. The rain had stopped, replaced by a thick grey fog that clung to the gravestones. 5 men stood in a circle in front of the massive marble mausoleum where Salvatore Moretti was buried. Among them was Don Rossi, a short, fat man with a cruel smile, and standing right beside him was Marcus Thorne. Marcus looked calm, but his eyes darted around nervously. He was wearing a black suit, looking every bit the grieving consigliere. "He's late," Don Rossi grunted, checking his gold watch. Maybe the boy came to his senses and ran. "He'll come," Marcus said smoothly. "Dante is arrogant. He thinks he can talk his way out of anything." "Or maybe," a voice boomed from the fog, "he just wanted to make an entrance." The men turned. Dante Moretti walked out of the mist. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a black tactical shirt and cargo pants, looking ready for war. But his hands were empty. He held them up, showing his palms. "I am unarmed," Dante announced, stopping 10 feet from the group, "as per the rules of the sit-down." "You have a lot of nerve coming here, boy," Don Rossi sneered. "After you kidnapped an innocent waitress and caused a scene in my city." "The waitress is safe," Dante said, "and she's not just a waitress. But we'll get to that." Dante looked at Marcus. "Hello, Marcus." Marcus stepped forward, feigning relief. "Dante, thank God. When I heard about the shooting, I thought we lost you. Come, step away from Rossi. We need to leave." Dante didn't move. He just smiled, a sad, broken smile. "You're a good actor, Marcus. You always were. You acted like a friend for 30 years. Marcus's smile faltered. "I don't know what you mean." "I know about the deal," Dante said, his voice rising so the other dons could hear. "I know about the docks. November 12th. $50 million. A ripple of murmurs went through the other 3 dons. Betraying your own capo was the ultimate sin, punishable by death. "He's delusional," Marcus said quickly, turning to the others. "The stress, the grief. He's lost his mind." "Do you have proof?" Don Rossi challenged, crossing his arms. "Words are wind, Moretti. Show me proof, or I will kill you right here for insulting my honor." "I have the ledger," Dante said. Rossi froze. Marcus went pale. "The ledger is a myth," Marcus stammered. "Is it?" Dante reached into his pocket. Every bodyguard tensed. Slowly he pulled out the silver locket. He held it up. "My father wore this around his neck?" "No. He gave it to the woman he loved. And she gave it to her daughter." Dante turned and whistled sharp and loud. From behind the mausoleum, a figure emerged. It was Eleanor. She wasn't wearing her waitress uniform anymore. She was wearing a sleek black trench coat Dante had found for her. Her hair was down, flowing in the wind. She looked regal. She looked dangerous. She walked up to Dante and stood beside him. She held the heart of the mountain in her hands. "Gentlemen," Dante said, "meet Elena Moretti, my sister." The shock on the faces of the dons was absolute. "She has the cipher," Dante continued, "and we have already sent copies of the decoded pages to every news outlet, the FBI and the IRS. They are scheduled to release in exactly," he checked his watch, "2 minutes, unless I stop them." "You rat!" Rossi roared, pulling a gun from his coat, violating the truce. "Aha!" Dante wagged a finger. "Shoot me, and the email goes out. The entire commission goes down. Your bank accounts, your safe houses, your mistresses. Everything exposed." Rossi lowered the gun, his hand shaking with rage. "What do you want?" "I want the truth," Dante said. "I want Marcus to admit it. Here, In front of God and my father's grave. Dante turned to Marcus. Tell them, Marcus. Tell them how you looked my father in the eye and sent him to die. Marcus looked around. He was cornered. The other Dons were looking at him with disgust. He knew he was a dead man walking. He let out a low, manic laugh. He was weak, Marcus shouted, his veneer cracking. Salvatore was going soft. He wanted to legitimize the business. He wanted to get out. He was going to ruin everything we built. I did it for the family. You did it for money, Dante corrected. And I'd do it again, Marcus spat. He suddenly lunged for Rossi, grabbing the gun from the fat man's hand. He wasn't aiming at Dante. He aimed at Elena. If I go down, Marcus screamed, I'm taking the bastard daughter with me. Bang! The gunshot echoed through the cemetery, scattering a flock of crows. Elena flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, but she felt no pain. She opened her eyes. Marcus stood there, eyes wide with shock. A small red dot appeared in the center of his forehead. He crumpled to the ground, dead before he hit the grass. Dante lowered his hand. He was holding the small backup pistol he had given Elena earlier. He had taken it back just before the meeting, concealed in his sleeve. He had drawn and fired in a fraction of a second, faster than anyone could react. Smoke curled from the barrel. Dante looked at the body of his godfather. Then he looked at Rossi. The meeting is over, Dante said coldly. The emails had been cancelled, but the page about Marcus, I sent that one to the police. They'll be here in 5 minutes to collect the garbage. He put his arm around Elena. Let's go home. Rossi watched them walk away, fear etched into his face. He knew, as did everyone else in that graveyard, that the Moretti family hadn't just survived. They had just been reborn, stronger than ever. But as they walked back to the car, Elena stopped. She grabbed Dante's arm. Her face was pale. Dante, she whispered. It's over, Elena. You're safe. No, she said, looking down at her stomach. She opened her coat. Blood was blossoming across her white shirt, a rapidly spreading crimson stain. Dante's world stopped. In the chaos, Marcus had managed to pull the trigger once. He hadn't missed. Elena! Dante screamed, catching her as her legs gave way. He fell to his knees in the wet grass, holding his sister, the only family he had left. It burns, she gasped, her eyes fluttering. No, look at me. Stay with me. Dante pressed his hands against the wound, desperate to stem the flow. Rocco, get the car. Now. Elena looked up at the grey sky. She smiled faintly. She started to hum. Dormi, dormi, o figlio mio. Don't sing, Dante begged, tears streaming down his face, mixing with her blood on his hands. Save your strength. Please, Elena. Not you too. I can't lose you too. The song, she whispered, her voice fading. It ends. Happily. Right? Her eyes drifted shut. Her hand, clutching the book, went limp. Dante Moretti, the man who made New York tremble, threw his head back and let out a scream of pure, unadulterated agony that shook the gates of the cemetery. The emergency room doors of Mount Sinai Hospital burst open, nearly torn from their hinges. Dante Moretti, covered in his sister's blood, sprinted alongside the gurney, his hand gripping Elena's cold fingers. Clear the hallway, Dante screamed, his voice raw. If she dies, this whole city burns. Do you hear me? Save her. Doctors and nurses swarmed the stretcher. Gunshot wound to the abdomen. BP is dropping. She's crashing. Sir, you have to stay back, a nurse shouted, pushing Dante's chest. She's my sister, Dante roared, fighting against the hands restraining him. Dante! Rocco, his bodyguard, grabbed him from behind, pinning his arms. Let them work, boss. You're no good to her in there. Dante watched helplessly as the double doors swung shut, swallowing the only person who mattered. He slumped against the white wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. The great Dante Moretti, the demon of New York, buried his face in his blood-stained hands and did something he hadn't done since he was a child. He prayed. 3 days passed. 72 hours of silence. Dante didn't leave the hospital. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He sat in the chair beside her bed, watching the jagged green line of the heart monitor. The doctors had removed the bullet, but the damage was severe. They said it was a miracle she made it off the table. On the 4th morning, as the sun touched the windowsill, the rhythm of the machine changed. It sped up. Elena's eyelids fluttered. She let out a small, pained gasp. Dante was there instantly, leaning over her. "Elena, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly. They were hazy, unfocused, but then they locked onto his. She blinked, confusion washing over her. "Dante!" she rasped, her voice dry as dust. "Am I—" "You're alive," Dante choked out, a tear escaping his eye. "You're alive. You're safe." Elena looked around the room, then back at him. She tried to smile, but winced. "Did we win?" Dante took her hand, kissing her knuckles gently. "Marcus is dead. Rossi has fled the country. The commission is terrified. We didn't just win, Elena. We conquered." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver locket. He placed it in her palm. "But I'm done. The business, the violence. I saw you bleeding out on that grass, and I realized something. Our father didn't write that song to hide a list of names. He wrote it to hide us." Elena squeezed the locket. "What are you saying?" "I'm dissolving the organization," Dante said, his voice firm. "We have the money. We have the leverage. We're going legitimate. No more guns. No more fear. We're going to build the life he wanted for us. A life with music." Elena smiled, genuine this time. "It sounds like a good song." 1 year later. Il Cigno Nero was reopened, but it was different now. The dark curtains were gone, replaced by light and flowers. The line to get in wrapped around the block. Dante sat in the corner booth, his booth, wearing a light grey suit. He looked younger, the weight of the underworld lifted from his shoulders. He was sipping water, watching the stage. The lights dimmed. The crowd hushed. Elena walked onto the stage. She wore a stunning emerald dress that hid the scar on her stomach. She adjusted the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces, and finally, resting her eyes on her brother. She signaled the pianist. She didn't sing a lullaby this time. She sang a jazz standard, upbeat and full of life. But as the song ended, she leaned into the mic and whispered one final line, a private message for the man in the corner booth. "The storm is over, the eagle sleeps, and the blood remembers love." Dante raised his glass in a silent toast. The waitress who became a princess and the monster who became a man shared a smile across the room. They had survived the drama, the twists, and the bullets. And for the first time in the history of the Moretti family, the song didn't end in tragedy. It ended in applause. And that is the incredible story of Elena and Dante. From a humble waitress serving coffee to a mafia princess holding the keys to the kingdom, Elena proved that sometimes the family you never knew you had is the only one that can save you. It was a journey of betrayal, hidden codes, and a bond that was thicker than blood. What do you think? If you found out your father was a secret billionaire mobster, would you have taken the locket to the police, or would you have trusted Dante like Elena did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of suspense and family secrets, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Until next time, Stay safe and keep listening.